Can you tell us how you found yourself in Washington, D.C. on January 6, 2021?
Good evening, Chair and Madam Vice Chair. Thank you for the introduction.
This guy sounds like a foreign influencer.
As stated in
an
the winter
election.
of 2020, I was working on a documentary. As part of that documentary, I filmed several rallies in Washington, D.C. on December the 11th and December the 12th. And I learned there would be a rally on the Mall on January 6th.
This story doesn't make
So
sense already, by the way.
my colleagues and I came down to document the rally. According to the permit of the
He said he was
event,
embedded
there was
with
going to be a
the
rally
Proud
at the
Boys.
Ellipse. We arrived at the Mall and observed a large contingent of Proud Boys marching towards the Capitol.
He said he was embedded
We
with the
filmed
Proud
them,
Boys.
And almost immediately I was separated from my colleagues.
He's
I
getting into
documented the
testimony
crowd
now
turned
without
from
actually describing the
protesters
context.
to rioters to insurrectionists.
This guy, the
I was
first guy said he was,
surprised at the size of the group,
what's his name?
the
The
anger
guy
and the
speaking
profanity.
said he was embedded with the Proud Boys. That
For
means
anyone
a
who didn't
long-term
understand how violent
infiltration.
that event was, I saw it, I documented it, and I experienced it. I heard incredibly aggressive chanting, and I shared.
He heard
shared that footage with the
incredibly
authorities.
aggressive
I'm here
chanting.
today pursuant to a House subpoena. Thank you so much.
Stretch my back.
Thank you, Mr. Quested.
He heard
The Select
extremely
Committee has
aggressive
conducted
chanting.
extensive investigative work to understand what led the Proud Boys and other rioters.
The unbelievable irony of this show trial is the Democrats funded the fake Russian hoax and fueled the fake news coverage that led to
showing
this
that the
disaster.
president's December 19th tweet calling his followers to Washington, D.C. on January 6th energized individuals from the Proud Boys and other extremist groups.
Objection calls for speculation.
I'd like to play a brief video highlighting some of this evidence.
Objection hearsay. Objection, you are a liar.
My name is Marcus
You are a
Childress.
propagandist
I'm an
liar.
investigative counsel
Sorry, let me just get
for
this
the
off.
Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol.
What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name.
supremacists and
Who would you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
After he made this comment,
Didn't he just
Enrique
blame?
Tarrio,
Didn't
then
they just
chairman of
blame
the
Trump
Proud
for
Boys,
not telling
said
him
on
then to
Parler,
stand back?
Standing by, sir. During our investigation,
Oh,
we
so
learned that
he's
this comment
Enrique
on the president's
Tarrio
debate
is an
actually led to
FBI
increase in
informant.
membership from the Proud Boys.
The FBI informant. They're using the FBI. Sorry. Oh my gosh. Enrique Tarrio is accused of being an FBI informant. They're using his tweets as incriminating evidence against Trump because the government informant said we're standing by. Can everyone appreciate that, please?
One of the vendors on my
1 hour,
page
53
actually
minutes
beat me
in.
to it,
I want to
but
clip
I
and
wish
stick
I
that.
would've- I wish
They
I
are
would've made a
using
stand back,
Enrico
stand by shirt.
Tarrio,
On
whatever
December
his name is,
19th, President Trump
who is now a
tweeted about the
known
January
FBI
6th
informant.
rally and told attendees,
And they're using his
"Be there,
tweets
we'll
as
be
incriminating
wild."
evidence against the
Many of
against
the
the
witnesses
president.
that we interviewed
Holy
were
sweet,
inspired by the
merciful
president's
goodness.
call
This is beyond
and came to
dishonesty.
DC for January 6th. But the extremists, they took it a step further. They viewed this tweet as a call to arms.
Sir, can I
A
see
day
what
later,
you're
the
reading
Department
from
of
right
Justice
now?
describes how the Proud Boys created a chat called the Ministry of Self-Defense Leadership Chat. In this chat, the Proud Boys established a command structure in anticipation of coming back to DC on January 6th. The Department of Justice describes Mr. Tarrio coming into possession of a document called the 1776 Returns, which describes.
Sir, may I have the script that you're reading from right now? May I know who drafted that script? May I have all edits of that script to see who had a hand in editing
You
it?
better get your ass to DC, folks, this Saturday.
Yeah, if you don't, there'll be no more republic. But we're not going to let that happen. It's not even an if. It's either President Trump is encouraged and bolstered, strengthened to do what he must do, or we wind up in a bloody fight. We all know that. The fight's coming.
The Oath Keepers began planning to block the peaceful transfer of power shortly after the November 3rd election. And according to the Department of Justice, Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keepers leader, said to his followers that we were not going to get through this without a civil war. In response to the December 19th, 2020 tweet by President Trump,
I'd like to know what you're reading from,
January
who
6th in
drafted it, who
Washington,
edited it, when it was
In response
created.
to
I'd like to
tweet,
see the
one member
metadata
of the
on this
president of the Florida
text.
chapter
Because
put on social media, the president
just call
calls
me
the Capitol. He
cynical.
wants us to
You're
make it
not
wild.
speaking of
The
your
goal
own
was for the Oath
volition
Keepers
right
to be
now.
called to duty so that they could keep the president in power, although President Trump had just lost the election.
Oh, that's a great.
The committee
This is
learned
like
that
the
Oath
worst
Keepers
infomercial I've ever
set up
seen.
Quick reaction forces outside of the city in Virginia.
Source,
where they stored
DOJ.
arms.
Do you see
The
that on
goal
the
of
top
these
there?
quick reaction forces was to be on standby.
Rhodes
just in case
indictments.
President Trump
They're
invoked the
citing
Insurrection Act.
themselves.
Did the Oath Keepers ever provide weapons to members?
I'm going to decline to answer that and put them at grounds for and due process grounds.
In footage obtained by the committee, we learned that on the night of January 5th, Enrique Tarrio and Stuart Rhodes met in a parking garage in Washington, D.C.
Enrique Tarrio, FBI informant, and I don't, you know,
Fighting the same fight.
I just watched Black Mass
The
the
committee
other day, and it
learned
was great.
that the Oath Keepers went into the Capitol through the
I'm
east
just gonna
doors in two stack
Enrico
formations.
Tarrio.
The DOJ alleges that one of the stacks went into the Capitol
Enrique
looking for Speaker
Tarrio,
Pelosi, although they never
informant.
found her. As the attack was unfolding, Mr. Tarrio
Yeah,
took credit.
Proud Boys
In
leader was
documents obtained by the
prolific
Department of
informer
Justice,
for law
Mr.
enforcement.
Tarrio
Enrico
said in an
Tarrio, the
encrypted
leader of the
chat,
Proud Boys
"Make
extremist
no
group,
mistake,
has a
and we
past
did
as an
this."
informer for federal and local law enforcement. They
Later on that
cited
evening, Mr.
a
Tarrio even
response
posted a
tweet
video
from
which
Enrico
seemed to
Tarrio
resemble him in
to
front of the
hold it against
Capitol
Donald
with a
Trump.
black cape.
This
And the
is
title of the video was Premonition.
this is not a kangaroo
The
court
evidence
because
developed
kangaroos are
by
actually
the
beautiful
Select Committee and the
creatures.
Department of Justice highlights how each group participated on the attack on the Capitol.
There's nothing rehearsed about this man's testimony right
the
now, people.
investigation
And if you think it's
revealed
rehearsed,
that it was individuals associated with the Proud
my
Boys
tongue
who
hurts
instigated
so
the initial
badly.
breach at the Peace Circle at 12:53 p.m.
Within 10 minutes, rioters had already filled the Lower West Plaza.
Who is this guy and what is he reading? And by the way, shameless
By
plug.
2 o'clock,
Who, what,
rioters
when,
had reached the
why,
doors
where?
on the West and the East plazas.
Merch. My
And by
gosh,
2:13,
more justice in
rioters had
kangaroo
actually broken
court.
through the Senate wing door and got into the Capitol building.
This is... Okay, we saw this already. That's twice
followed.
now. Yes, find them, arrest them, put
At
them in jail for
2:25
6 months
p.m.,
for breaking a
rioters
window.
breached the east side doors to the rotunda.
There's not that
And
many
right after
people there
2:40
right now,
p.m.,
actually.
rioters breached the east side doors near the Ways and Means room.
Oh, they won't do BLM riots.
Once the rioters
It's a summer of
infiltrated
love.
the
What are you talking
Capitol,
about, sir?
they moved through the crypt,
We saw this video already.
the rotunda,
We saw this already.
the hallways leading
We
to the
saw
House
this
chambers,
already.
and even inside the Senate chambers.
Imagine you have 500 days of investigation and you're already reusing exhibits in the first 1 hour and 20
Individuals
minutes.
associated with two violent extremist groups have been charged with seditious conspiracy in connection with the January 6th attack. One is the Oath Keepers. They are a group of armed anti-government extremists.
Armed
The other
anti-government
group is the
extremists.
Proud Boys.
How many people in the
They
States
promote
have
white
firearms?
supremacist
And if they are critical of the
have
government, how many
engaged in
armed...
violence with people they view as their political enemies. Members of both groups have already pled guilty to crimes associated with the January 6th
They've
attack.
already pled guilty. I mean, I guess it's a great thing you
It's
overcharged
requested
them and kept them
as
in solitary
part of the
confinement for weeks.
documentary you've been filming, you gain access to the Proud Boys and their leader, Enrique Tarrio. Your crew filmed them in Washington, D.C.
Your crew
on
filmed
the evening of
an
January
FBI
5th,
informant.
and then on January
Look at his face.
6th.
He's this guy. This
On
is his
January 5th,
the moment of his
night
life.
before the attack,
He'll never have a
you
bigger
were
audience
with
again.
the head of the Proud Boys, Mr. Tarrio, in Washington, D.C. What happened?
Objection.
We picked up Mr. Tarrio from
Compound
jail.
question. Leading the
He'd,
witness.
Been arrested for
Calls for speculation.
carrying some magazines, some extra capacity magazines.
Extra
and,
capacity magazines.
for
What does that
he
mean,
took
sir?
responsibility for the burning of the Black Lives Matter flag that was stolen from the church.
Objection. Calls for speculation.
On December the 12th. We were attempting to get an interview with Mr. Tarrio. We had no
Well, you should have just
idea
asked the
of
FBI,
any
dum-dum,
of the events that
if you
were
had
going to
known.
subsequently happen. We drove him to pick up his bags from the property department of the police, which is just south
I'm sorry.
of the mall.
What the
We
hell
picked up
did you
his
just
bags
say,
and went
sir?
to get some other bags from the Phoenix Hotel.
So you drove him to get some bags from the police. So you,
encountered Mr.
sir,
Stuart
are working with the
Rhodes,
police as well.
from the Oath
You are an
Keepers.
FBI informant as well, pretty much.
By the time I'd gone to park the car, my colleague was saying, who'd got into the car with Mr. Tarrio, that they had moved to a location around the corner, the parking garage of the Hall of Legends, I believe. And
Do it,
so we
like and share.
quickly drove over
Thank you,
there.
Your Church.
We drove down into the parking garage.
This is bullshit.
And
This is
filmed the
world
scene
class.
of Mr. Tarrio and Mr. Rhodes and certain other individuals in that garage.
I'm sorry, but how do we know that this guy is not an FBI
we
informant?
then
How do we know that
continued
he's
to
not
follow
working
Mr.
with
Tarrio.
intelligence?
There was some discussion about
Sounds
where
like
he
he
was
is.
going to go. He ended up going towards a hotel in Baltimore, and we conducted an interview with him in the hotel room.
This
and then
guy
we returned
conducted
to
an
DC for
interview
that
with
night,
Tario, who is an
in
FBI
a,
informant.
And what was interesting
Why
that
on
night
earth
actually was that
would
was the
anyone from the
first
Proud Boys
indication
agree
that
to an interview
DC was much
the day of
more,
an insurrection?
busy than it had been any other time we'd been here.
This is
because
this
we
is
couldn't get
beyond
into
a
the
wrap-up
hotels
smear. This
we
is a
wanted
wrap-up
to,
setup.
and
Ooh,
we
can we make that trend?
ended up at a
Hashtag
hotel
wrap-up
that,
setup.
was not as satisfactory as we would hoped.
Thank you. So what you're saying is you filmed the meeting between Mr. Tarrio and Oath Keepers leader Stuart Rose, right?
Indeed.
You couldn't hear what was said, but according to the Justice Department indictment of Mr. Tarrio,
You couldn't hear.
participant
You couldn't hear what was said, but according to what we told you
Now, on the
happened.
morning of January
Please
6th,
go on.
you learned the Proud Boys were
Can't do it.
together
I'm not
near
sure I
the
can do
rally
this. I can't do this
scheduled
for 4 more days.
to
People.
take place near the White House.
The White House.
What
Yes.
time did you meet up with the Proud Boys and what was happening?
This guy
when
just
they met?
testified that he came in December and now he's
We met
meeting up with the Proud Boys.
Somewhere around 10:30 a.m. and they were starting to walk down the mall.
The Proud Boys, a known terrorist entity, just welcomes in a random British documentarian to show them the ins and outs of their insurrectionist activity. This is about as plausible as.
And I was
sorry.
Confused to a
Getting too
certain
excited.
extent why we were walking away from the president's speech, because that's what I felt we were there to cover.
So at 10:30 a.m., that's early in the day. That's even before President Trump had started speaking.
That's a
Am I
good point.
correct?
So
Yes, sir.
way to confirm that Trump speaking
So
had
how
nothing
many
to do with
Proud
it.
Boys would you estimate were marching together to the Capitol?
A couple of hundred, potentially. Yeah, I'd say a couple of hundred Proud Boys were marching towards the Capitol at that point.
At the time, was the area heavily guarded?
No, that was, I remember we walked past we walked
I'm
down
doing
the
it.
mall.
I'm
walked
covering
to the
it.
right
Period.
to the reflecting pool, and then north along.
I'll tell you, I'm
the
just
road
happy
that
that I
leads to
know
the
things
Peace
that I don't
Circle.
actually
And as
remember
we were
that I know.
walking past the
Tario
Peace
was an
Circle,
informant.
I
This
framed
guy
the
now is
Proud Boys to the
interviewing an
right of
informant.
my
They are
shot
relying on
with the
tweets
Capitol
of the
behind,
informant to
and
support
we
the
see
insurrectionist
one
narrative.
sole police
This is
officer,
a wrap-up
at
setup.
the barriers, which
Sorry,
subsequently
is that what I said
breached.
was before? Hold on one second.
We then walk up and past
Oh.
a tactical unit preparing, and you see that in the film where the man questions
I had no
their
doubt you would be
duty and their
impressed
honor,
by
and you
the
see
propaganda of this
maybe
hearing,
a dozen Capitol Police putting on their riot gear.
So how would you describe the atmosphere at that time?
The atmosphere it seemed to be
Liars
much
of
darker.
feather.
I make efforts to
Promote
create,
propaganda together,
a
period.
familiarity between myself and my subjects to make them feel comfortable. And
Oh boy,
the atmosphere
okay.
was much darker this day than had been in these other
Wrap-up
these other
setup
days.
is what this
And there was
is.
also a contingent of Proud Boys that I hadn't met before from Arizona who appeared to wear these orange hats and had orange armbands.
Wrap-up setup. Okay, that's what it is.
So when the Proud Boys went back down the hill.
Can you
to
believe that
Peace
they're trying to
Circle,
pass this
did
off
a
as like a
larger
legitimate
crowd start
question and
together?
cross-examination?
Well, no,
Legitimate
first of all, we went round to the back and
examination.
down the steps, and we took some photographs.
Sir, you're on
of
my
the
side.
east
We
side
both
of the
hate the same
Capitol.
person. These are
And
leading
then we
questions
went
with
for
no
lunch.
adversarial
We
process.
went for
I'm just going to
tapas.
ask you the questions, and no one is there to possibly object.
So Mr. Quested, you're a journalist, so you're careful to stick to things that you have observed.
He's
What-
just testified to a
you've
bunch of
told
crap he
us
hasn't observed.
Is highly relevant.
This is a sham.
Let me
Period.
highlight a few key facts.
Let me
that
highlight
you
a few
and
key
others
facts
have provided the committee.
that others have provided.
First,
You
there
only
was a
testified the
large
things
group
you've
of
seen.
Proud Boys present at the Capitol. We know that from multiple sources. You now estimate that there were around 250
This is not going to the Supreme Court because this is not a
to
court
300
hearing.
individuals.
This is
that
political
testified.
propaganda theater.
They weren't there for President Trump's speech. We know this because they left that area to march toward the Capitol before the speech began.
But you just said that Trump
They walked
incited
around
this.
the
So if they
Capitol that
marched to the
morning,
Capitol before Trump even
I'm
began
concerned
speaking,
this
how did he
allowed them
incite
to
this?
see
You
what
liars.
defenses were in place and where weaknesses
You're liars.
might
Nobody.
be.
How do people not have the
And they
fear of God
decided to
for lying
launch
like this?
their attack at the Peace Circle, which is the front door of the Capitol complex. It's the first security perimeter that those marching from the ellipse would have to come to as they moved toward the Capitol. The Peace Circle walkway was always where the thousands of angry Trump supporters
Oh, the
would
walkaway,
arrive after
Brendan.
President Trump
Brendan Strzok.
sent
You got a
them
shout out.
from the lips. The Proud Boys timed their attack to the moments before the start of the joint session in the Capitol.
So the Proud
which is
Boys
also
planned
where
their attack
President
before Trump even began
directed
speaking.
the angry mob, quote, "We fight like hell," end quote. He told them before sending them
Objection. What the hell
Avenue,
are you on
right
about,
to where the
sir?
Proud Boys
Objection.
gathered
Can you stop?
and where
And
you
actually,
were
this is a
filming.
joke. Oh my
Now,
gosh.
central question is
My simple
whether
question?
the attack on the Capitol was coordinated and planned. What you witnessed is what a coordinated and planned effort would look like.
I'm telling you what it was.
It was the culmination of
This is so
months-long
nauseating.
effort
If you don't
spearheaded
find this nauseating,
President
you are
Trump.
intellectually dishonest. I
Ms.
don't go
Quested,
after intentions very
thank you
often.
for your eyewitness account of the lead up to the breach of the Peace
So
Circle.
far, this guy
This brings us to
has
a point
testified
in
more than the
time
actual
where
witness
you
he called.
and Officer Edwards were in close proximity.
Look
At
at those
this point,
journalists.
I reserve the
those
balance of my time pursuant to 5C, Section 8 of House Resolution 503.
Benny
Chair
is
recognizes
telling
the
him what he
gentlewoman
saw.
From Wyoming, Ms. Cheney, for questioning.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Let's
much, Mr. Chairman.
leading. He's not leading him.
Officer
He's
Edwards, I wanna
testifying
start
for
by
him.
thanking you for your
My
service.
dog stepped on
and
a
thank you for your courage. Thank you for being here this evening.